Kakadosh Boker Tov Masechet Moed Katan Daf 26a1. We just mentioned, right, as follows. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned to the Braita. Ve'elu akraim shemitachim. These are kraim. These are the tears that basically a person would do kriya for, that they're not allowed to be me'acheh, which means they're not allowed. That means they're never allowed to come and to stitch it back together. Hakorei al aviv elimo, on his father or his mother. That Rabbo shlimdo Torah, on a rabbi that they taught him Torah. Ve'al nasi, on the nasi, al avbetin, on the avbetin, ve'al shemuot araot, on shemuot raot, ve'al birkat Hashem, and on the blessing of Hashem. Obviously means the opposite, right? Which means that if somebody hears somebody coming and cursing the name of Hashem, they would have to do kriya. Sefer Torah shnisafar, and a Sefer Torah that was burnt. Also in the cities of Yehuda or the Bet HaMikdash or Yerushalayim, they would come and they would not be able to. They have to tear, and they're not allowed to come, and they're not allowed to sew it back together. Ve'korea, and they have to be korea al hamikdash. They have to tear on the Bet HaMikdash, the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, and they continue the kera, which means they continue the tearing on the destruction of Yerushalayim as well. Now the Gemara is going to go kavav. Yeah, the Gemara is going to go and explain each one of these things. How do we know that Aviv Imo? So Aviv Imo v'Rabbo Shlamdot Tira Minalan. How do we know that if a person tears for the father and the mother, or the rabbi that taught them Torah? How do we know that they're obligated to do kriya bichlal? It says in the pasuk, "Elisha roeh v'hu mitzaeh." So Elisha Navi, he sees, right, that Eliyahu Navi is leaving this world, and he's screaming, "Avi, Avi, rechev Yisrael u'parashav." Right, my father, rechev Yisrael u'parashav, the chariot of Yisrael. And then what happened? He didn't see him anymore, because remember, obviously Eliyahu did not actually, physically die. Right, so he says, so what happened? He took his clothing, it says, and he tore it into two pieces. Avi, Avi, when it says Avi, Avi, what does it say Avi, Avi twice? Avi is not just father, it's father and mother. That's Avi, Avi. And when it says Rechev Yisrael u'parashav, what is that referring to? Rabbo shlimdo Torah, his rabbi that taught him Torah. My mashma, how do we see that this is hinted in the rabbi that taught him Torah, that the Rechev Yisrael u'parashav, which is basically the chariot of Israel? How is that the hint? Right? So he says, Metargem Rav Yosef, just like Rav Yosef comes and he was Metargem, Rebbe, Tetav le'ol Yisrael b'tzloteh. Rebbe is because he helped Bnei Yisrael with their tefillot. Meretichin u'parashim, more than all the markevot u'parashim, which means what usually helps the army, the chariots, the tanks. That's what usually comes and helps the army. He says the tefillot of the tzaddik, of the rabbi that was teaching him Torah, helped more than all the chariots, all the chariots and everything, and that's why it's called Rechev Yisrael u'parashav. Okay. Next, Velo mitachim minalan. How do we know that we do not come? Velo mitachim minalan. How do we know that we're not allowed to come and sew it back together? The Ketubah says in the pasuk that he grabbed the clothing and he tore it into two. From the fact that it says that he tore it, and I don't know that he tore it into two. Obviously, he tore it into two. That it always has to stay torn into two different parts. Amar le Shakish Rabbi Yochanan, says Shakish Rabbi Yochanan. Eliyahu hayhu. So what are you talking about? Eliyahu never died. He's hay v'kayam. So what does it mean that he passed away and therefore he did kriya? He's hay v'kayam. He says, no, since it says that he never saw him again, it's considered that he's already dead. Because that's it, he never saw him again. So it's considered that he died, even though we know that Eliyahu Navi did not die, he went up alive. Right? That was a trick question that they once asked me when I was, I don't remember how old I was. When they said, who was the person that was never born and who was the person that never died? So I said, a person that was never born was a Adam Rishon, he was never born. Who was the person that never died? Eliyahu Navi. Right? But he went up alive. Yeah. Right, so that's no. Now nasi av bedin ushmot araot menalan. Now to do with a nasi that passes away, or an av bedin that passes away, or shmot araot, bad things that happen. Menalan. How do we know also, right, that they're allowed to do kriya? Not that they're allowed, that they're obligated to do kriya. Tichtiv says in a pasuk, "V'yachazek David b'begadav v'yikrem," that David HaMelech tore his clothing. V'gam kol anashim yeshido v'yispidu v'yikuv v'tzumod ha'erev al Shaul. They went on Shaul. Right, that they went, they fell to the sword. Shaul is a nasi. Shaul was a nasi. He's the melech. Yonatan, he was a chacham. They have bedin. Al Am Hashem Bet Israel right? That they went and they fell to the sword. Those are the bad things that happen, bad calamities, bad tragedies. They come and they tear their clothing. So that's how we know that they tear the clothing for a nasi, a chacham, or for bad things that happen. Amar le Rav bar Shabba le Rav Kahana. Says Rav bar Shabba le Rav Kahana. He says ve'ema ad dehavu kulu. Maybe a person is only obligated to do kriya if you have all of them together. Meaning you need the nasi plus the chacham plus shmuot haraot. Then you come and you're obligated to do kriya. But on each one individually, how do you know? Amale al kifsika inyan. Al is the pasek. Al ze. Yeah.
How do you help?
The al was a pasek, right? Was an interruption between all the different things that we mentioned. So therefore, even if it's going to be a 1-1-1, even on the nasi that dies, or the chacham that dies, or on shmuot haraot, we're going to have to do kiriyah, right? Umi karina and shmuot haraot. Do people come and they start tearing their clothing on bad things that happen? They said once to Shmuel, right? The king Shavur Malka killed 12,000 Jews in Mizigat Kesare. He didn't tear his clothing. You know what it is? 12,000 Jews being killed, and he didn't tear his clothing. So says the Gemara, he says no. That is only if it didn't happen, something bad happened to the majority of the tzibur, and like the story that happened that actually Shaul died and the children died, right? That's what's going to happen. Umi katal Shivur Malka, you died. The what? Did Shivur Malka actually come and kill Jews? Shivur Malka told he said, I should get a reward that I never killed a Jew in my life. So says the Gemara, Hatam inu garmi lenafshayhu. There he brought it on his own self. The Amar Rabbi Ami says Rabbi Ami, lekal yetire de mizigat kesara, because of the call metre kinrot of mizigat kesara, right? That they were coming haka shura de lutkiya, right? All of a sudden it was the wall of the lutkiya was broken. Okay, so here it says, that means they went and they heard like about different types of rebellions, and that's why he went. And actually, that means basically these Jews brought it on themselves. Right? That means basically they went and they rebelled against the king. So because they rebelled against the king, he went and he killed 12,000 of them in one shot. So it wasn't that he went and he loved killing Jews. The opposite. He never killed a Jew in his life. But when they went and they did the rebellion, that's when he went and he killed them out. Al birkat Hashem and Alan. How do we know that if a person chas v'shalom curses Hashem? Obviously here it says birkat Hashem, because we don't want to say the curse. But birkat Hashem, how do we know that a person has to tear the clothing? Tichtiva yavo Eliakim ben Chilkiyahu asher el bay v'shevna sofer v'yoach ben Asaf hamaskir el Chizkiyahu krueh begadim. So he comes and he says all these things, and they didn't. So what happened is after they heard a curse, and then they went and they sent Sancheriv Melech Hashur v'lachen karu bigdehem. So they went and they tore their clothing. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. So that's on to do with Birkat Hashem. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Echad hashomea ve'echad hashomea mipi hashomea chayav likro. It doesn't matter whether you heard the curse or you heard it from a person that heard the curse. Chayav likro. You're also obligated to do kiriyah. Va'edim ena chayav likro. But the edim which are testifying in the betin, that they already shekvar karu that they already tore their clothing at the time, they do not have to come and tear their clothing. Besha sheshamu, my have, says the Gemara, during the time when a person hears the curse, my have, what is that? Hakasham yahashta, right? They're seeing it, they're hearing it, and they're saying it in front of the Dayanim. So says the no, the king tore it when he heard what went on. But they, which are the edim, did not tear because they already tore at the time that they heard, right, the curse of Hashem. And how do we know that if a person hears the name of Hashem cursed, that okay, they do kriya? We just learned from where? How do you know you're not allowed to sew it back up forever? So it says atya kriya, it's a gzira shava kriya. Next, sefer Torah shenisraf, a sefer Torah which is going to be burnt. Menalan, how do we know that a person that sees a sefer Torah that's being burnt, how do we know that he has to tear his clothing? Tichtiv, it says in a pasuk, what does that mean? It says over here, when you're going to have a kikroe Yehudi shalosh latot, when a person is going to call for 3 houses and 4, right? So that's the Melech Yoakim is going to come and he's going to tear the Megillah b'Torah Sefer, v'ashlecha la'esh, they threw it in the fire. So my shalosh latot v'arba, what does it mean 3 or 4? What's going on? Amru le Yoyakim. They went and they told Yoyakim, Katav Yirmiyahu Sefer Kinot. Yirmiyahu came and he burnt and he wrote a Sefer Kinot on the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Amar lehu ma'ktivi. What's written? How are you going to be sitting by yourself? Amar lehu ana malka. He says, I'm the king, right? And on a king, you don't write that. So what happened? Amrule, they said, Bachot tivke balayla. You have to cry in the nighttime. Ana malka. Galta Yehuda meoni. Ana malka. He says, what? I'm the king. Talchet Zion avelot. Ana malka. I'm the king. Hayutzarea lerosh. Right? The shlitim, which is he's going to lose his kingdom. Right? Amar lehu manamra. Who said this? Ki Hashem. He says, who said this? He says, Ki Hashem hoga. Right? Arov pesha. Miyad kadal kol askarot sheba. He went and he cut out all the askarot in it. Right? Usrafam be'esh. And he burnt it in a fire. That means only after the 5th pasuk. That's why it says, Shalosh tlatot garba. That's when he went and he said this. Sorry. Which means that after 4 or after 5, that the 5th pasuk, he came, he cut all the names and he burnt it in the fire. And that's what it says. They didn't come and they didn't tear their clothing. That they had to tear their clothing. So Amar Papa Abaye says, Papa Abaye, Eimar mishum shemot arot. I would have said, right, that maybe the reason why they had to tear was because of shemot arot, not because of the burning of the name of Hashem meaning a Sefer Torah Shemot. Yeah, so he says, Amalei shemot arot ba'ishat amihavu. He says there was no shemot arot. Right? Why? Because it was only nevuah on the future. Meaning on a nevuah on a future of something bad that's going to happen, right? You don't have to do anything. It's only if you actually heard the bad news that something happened now, then you have to do something. So here it's obviously because of a Sefer Torah Nisraf. That's why this happened. Amar Rabbi Halbo, Amar Ravuna. Says Rabbi Halbo in the name of Ravuna. Haroeh Sefer Torah Shenikra. If a person sees a Sefer Torah that was torn, Hayav likro shte kriyot. They have to come and they have to tear 2 times. Echad al gvil, one is on the klaf, and one on the ktav, one of the writing. Shneimar says in the pasuk, Acharei serof hamelech et Megillah et Dvarim. After the melech is going to come and he's going to burn the Megillah and the Dvarim. Yeah, after the melech is going to burn the Megillah and the Devarim. Rabbi Abba v'Rav Huna bar Chia avu yatve. So Rabbi Abba and Rav Huna bar Chia were sitting right in front of right. Kam Rabbi Abba balei punuye. He went and he had to do his necessities. So Shak lived into tefta. Right, he took off his tefillin. Achti abei sadia, and he put it on top of the pillow. Atai batna mita bala mivla. So a bata ya'ana, which is a type of a bird, came and it wanted to swallow the tefillin. Amar says Rabbi Abba, if right now the bata yana is going to come and bolea the tefillin, I'm going to be chayav 2 kriyot. Amalei, so Rav Huna bar Chia told Rabbi Abba, how do you know that? The habit that happened to him. He came in front of Matra. He didn't know the answer. He went in front of Yehuda. And he told him this is what Shmuel says. That's only going to be if a person is chayavim in likroa alibud kitvei hakodesh shel bizroa uchma, which means when he did it bekoach, which means mamash they burnt it, like the story of Yoyakim that he burnt the sword. Meaning if somebody comes and he burns tefillin in front of you, that's something else. It actually happened, by the way, yesterday, right? I think it happened yesterday or in Shabbat, but it was only in the news yesterday that somebody went into a Bet Knesset. A Chiloni came into a Bet Knesset in Tveria, right? Mamash goes into a Bet Knesset, opens up the Echal, takes a Sefer Torah, and he threw it on the floor. Arei Yehuda Minalan. How do we know that Arei Yehuda also they have to come and they're going to tear for the Arei Yehuda for the cities of Yehuda that were destroyed? The Chtiv says in Pasuk, "Vayavo anashim mishechem mishalom mishomron, 80 ish migilochez zakan ukre begadim mitkonoddim." So they went and they were all torn and everything because of the avelut, and they went and they tore their clothing. So these people, they brought korbanot and all this is why, because they didn't know that the Bet HaMikdash was already destroyed. But nevertheless, they still tore the clothing because of the Yehuda that was also destroyed. Arei Yehuda. Amar Rabbi Chelbo, Amar Il Ula Bira, Amar Rabbi Lazar. Says Rabbi Chelbo, Nemer Ula Bira, Nemer Rabbi Lazar. Haroeh Arei Yehuda bechurbanan omer, Arei kochecha yum miba vekorea. So a person that sees the cities of Yehuda that was destroyed, this is what I read to you in the Shulchan Aruch, if you remember. In Siman Taf Samech was Taf Kufim Tet. Let me just see where this is. Yeah, he comes and he says, Ain. Taf Kuf Samech Aleph. Yeah, Rekot Shecha Yom Miba veKorea, and he tears. Yerushalayim Mechubana says, Yom Miba Raita Yerushalayim Mishemama Korea. Bet HaMikdash Mechub No Mem Bekot Shem V'Tivretenu Asher Yiluch Avotenu Yot Seferet Esh V'Chom Modenu Yeh Lechurba veKorea, and he tears. Yeah, you're listening. So Korea al Hamikdash Mosiv Yerushalayim. So first he tears on the Bet HaMikdash, And then he continues on Yerushalayim. We have a contradiction. Whether it's a person that hears above the Churban Bet HaMikdash or the one that sees the Churban Bet HaMikdash, once he gets to the Mount Scopus, Korea, he tears. The Korea he tears two different tearing. One for the Bet HaMikdash and one for the Yerushalayim. Says the Gemara, that's not a question. One, he saw the Bet HaMikdash first. Another one, he saw Yerushalayim first. Everyone, all the other kraim that we spoke about, he's permitted l'sholelan, which means to put them together, ulmolelan, or to be mekapelotam, ulloketan, right? Or it says over here, what is loketan? La'gedo biyado, to hold it together with his hand, right? To gather it. La'asotan means sulamot, and to make it like a ladder. Avalo lachotam, but not permitted to come and to actually sew it back together. Okay? Yeah. So basically very lightly, but not like mamash, like a real stitch, like a real that, it looks like nothing was ever done. Amar Rav Chasta, says Rav Chasta, Kavav Mubet, 26b. Ubi Ichui Alexandrian. We're talking about an Ichui Me'ule, which means a Sur Lasot. An Ichui is an Alexandrian type of a stitch, which is a very good sewing. You're not allowed to do. Okay? Next. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned to the Braita. HaKorea mitoch HaShalal, o mitoch HaMelal, o mitoch HaLeket, o mitoch Sulamot, lo yatsa. Which means if a person is going to be Korea Lamet, where he already did it for the past, meaning he already tore his clothing for somebody, and then he went and he fixed it, and then he tore again. Doesn't matter whether he tore in the Shalal, Malal, or Leket, or Sulamot, which is again all these things which a person was permitted to do because they stitched it up, but not in a professional way, and now they tore this way. Lo yatzai, he wasn't going to be tzedek chova kriya, because since he tore on something that was already torn, so he's not going to be tzedek chova. But if that person came and he stitched it back together 100% because they were allowed to, and now they did another kriya, it's going to be tzedek chova. He was tzedek chova. Why? Because it was a perfect, they stitch it back together perfect. Amar Rav Chasta says, we're talking about the Yichul Alexander. Tell Rabbanan, we learned to the right.
It's called invisible.
Tanu Rabbanan, we learned to the right that he's allowed to put it on the bottom part and then to be me'ached, which means he's allowed to turn the clothing upside down, and then the bottom part is going to be where the tearing is, and then he's allowed to be me'ached. He says you're never allowed to come and to be me'ached, which means to put it back together like the sewing, the perfect sewing. Just like the one that's selling torn clothing is not allowed to come and not allowed to sew it together, so too the lokeach is a sulach. For example, let's say you're selling a clothing. Majority of the times they used to sell worn clothing. So you're selling a clothing and there was a torn done. Why was a tear done? Because somebody passed away. You have to tell the buyer. Because just like you are not allowed to come and to be me'achetze, so too the buyer cannot be me'achetze. So that's what you're obligated to come and tell the buyer in order that he doesn't do it as well. The beginning of the kriya is going to be a tefach. The tosefet shalosh etzbaot. Now tosefet that you have to do afterwards is going to be, there is always a kriya has to be minimum of a tefach, 8 centimeters. And then if you want to continue, then you're going to do 6. You're going to do three fingers, which is 6 centimeters. I think it is, no? That's what I remember.
Is 4.
No, tefach is 8 centimeters.
Yes, but tefach.
That's what I remember.
Yeah.
8 centimeters. Yes, the tefach is 8 centimeters, and I think called etzba, it's etzba gudal, which is 2 centimeters each. So if it's shalosh etzbaot, that's why it's 6 centimeters. Rabbi Yehuda says techilat kriya shalosh etzbaot, and then the tefach could be kolshu, could be any amount. Yeah. So 8 centimeters. No, they did. Here, tefach 8 centimeters. Gimel gudalim etzbaot 6 centimeters. You have it there. Everything's there. Very good. Next. Okay. Okay. Amar Ula says halacha is like Rabbi Meir b'kriya, which means that a person always has to do a minimum of a tefach. Halacha Rabbi Yehuda b'tosefet. Halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda and the tosefet, which is going to be a tosefet kolshu. Right? That's why it's very important to remember that. We learned in the Braita. What happened if they told them a father passed away? They told the person, and he did kriya, and then beno. What does he have to do? Nosif, right? Ve'osif. Hatachton, right? Mitacheh. Yeah, betoch hashiva. What happened? Yes, it says here hatachton, which is the tosefet mitacheh. He's allowed to tie it back together. He's allowed to sew it back together. But the elyon, which is the top one, eno mitache. Because remember, we said that the only one which is not mitache is the father, mother, rabbi, and other ones. But for example, any other type of the 7 relatives, they're allowed to be mitache. They're allowed to come and sew it back together. Okay? Met beno vekara. What happens if the son passes away and he did kriya? Then afterwards, the father passed away and he was mosif. So the elyon mitache. The one that he did for the son, he's allowed to be mitache. But the bottom one that he did for the father, he's not going to be mitache. Met aviv, met imo. What happens now if it's the father and the mother? Or met achiv, met achoto. Korea kera echad lekulan. So now he's allowed to do one for everybody. So it says over here, since it was all in one shot, he's not chayav to add on. It means if it was one after another one, so in every single one, he has to do a kriya nosefet. But the fact that it was all in one shot, with one kriya, he's going to be tzedek chuva everybody in all one shot, even though it was the father and the mother and the brother and the sister. But since everyone's done in one shot, right? That means they told him in one shot, so yeah, he does it in one. He does it in one for all. Rabbi Yehuda ben Metera Omer, Rabbi Yehuda ben Metera says, Al kulan kera echad, al aviv ve'imo kera echad. He says no. According to Shittat Rabbi Yehuda ben Metera, everybody is one kera, and then the father and the mother, it's another kera. Yeah?
Yeah.
You understood? Because basically the father and the mother is a separate entity. So that is one kera. And then on all the other relatives, it's one kera. That means even if it was done at the same time, you have to separate. Father and the mother.
Anyway,
Right? It's true. But a person can never add on to a kera vivimo. What's reasoning? Amar Rav Nachman ben Yitzchak said mitzvah, but it's not going to be in a tosefet. Yeah, but b'diavad, if they did it the other side, it's still going to be okay. So let's say they did one side, or since it was anyway in the father mother, they did everything on the left, but they did it in one shot, so they did it on the left. Fine. So the first
brother in there,
right? Yeah, that's what we're saying.
On the left side,
they could just add on to it. That's what we're saying. Even though the other one says no, you don't. Again, it depends what shita. The first shita was they do one for everybody. The second shita, Rabbi Yehuda ben Metera, they have to separate one for the father and the mother, and then one for everybody else. That was two different shitas.
Didn't we learn that it has to be on the right side?
Amar Shemuel, says Shemuel, Alakha Rabbi Yehuda ben Metera, Alakha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Metera. Me Amar Shemuel, Shemuel actually said that. Amar Shemuel says Alakha K'divei Mekel be'evel. This is one thing we always go like Mekel. So if we always go like the Mekel would be that they could do it everybody in one shot, right? 5 for 1, right? What are they going to do? The one for the father and mother, and one for the other ones. So he says no, avelut lechut. To do with the ilchot avelut, we go like the mekel. To do with the ilchot kriya, we have to go like the malchmi. Now we don't go like the mekel. There's no general rule that you go. So therefore, we have to do it like that. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara, "Heichan kara korea." Until when is it going to person do the kriya? Which means until when can they do the kriya? Ad tiburo, until his belly button. The Yeshomim, some people say al libo, until his heart. Even though there's no raya, zechel devar is a remembrance. Right, which means you're going to tear their hearts and on their clothing. What does that mean? Okay, once he gets to his tiburo, to his belly button, marchik shalosh etzbaot. So he has to do 3 etzbaot vekorea, and then he's going to be korea. So if it's it's full of tears, he has to turn it around. One second. If he turns it around, then he's going to turn around, and then he's going to start doing it from the back. If it's too many tears on the top, so then he puts it on the bottom. If he's going to be korea from the bottom or from the tzadin, he's never going to be tzadin. Only a kohen gadol does the kriya on the bottom. So he says it's a machloket, right, between Rav Matra bar Ukva, and both of them said in the name of Avua de Shmuel v'Levi. Chadamar, one of them says kol shiv'a korea, right? If a person passes all the 7 days, he could do the kriya. Le'achar shiva, after the 7 days, musif, he just adds on to the kriya. Chadamar, one of them says kol shloshim korea, meaning that means basically what happened was like this: somebody passed away, they did a kriya. Now somebody passed away within the shiva, so that was the case that we spoke about before. So therefore, somebody passed away within the shiva, so it says musif. The Chadamar, one of them says no, kol shloshim korea, they have to do a new kriya. After shloshim is mosif, he just adds on to the original kriya. So matkif la Rabbi Zera mandamar kol shiva korea. According to mandamar, that's all the 7 days he can do kriya. Amai delo nitnu l'sholo. He says why? Why is it that way? Because he wasn't allowed to come, and within the shiva, he's not allowed to be even sholel. Remember, within the shiva, he's not allowed to sew it up at all. Not even a haphazard type of, meaning not even a good any type. You're not allowed to do it. Elahad amar mor aisha shalotol al tarachanami. Says what about a woman? A woman, if you remember, we said that the second she does the kriya, and immediately she's able to cover it up, right? So what's going on? So he says, Achanami also the same halacha. So he says, Hata mishum kavod ha'isha. No, there it's because of the kavod ha'isha. Yeah, it's because it's new that it's not the kavod. So that's a different halacha. So Mandamar Koshushin Korea, according to Mandamar that says all the 30 days they're going to do the kriya. My why? Because he's not allowed to be me'ached. He's not allowed to come and sew it back properly. That's only for the father and mother that he's not allowed to do that. So then it should always be the same halacha, which means that he's never allowed to be mosif on the kriya because he was never allowed to be and to be me'ached. So answers the Gemara, no, it's the same. Really, by man, a person is allowed to do it. It's only because of the kavod of the father and the mother that they don't do it. Therefore, they should always leave it torn. But that was because of the kavod of the parents that they leave it torn. We learned in a Braita. Right? That means imagine right now a person comes and he put on a clothing which was already torn in front of the mat. So everyone should think that he already did the kriya. So he's stealing from the metim and from the chayim. Why? Because he cheated the living people and he cheated the dead person. The person was obligated to do kriya now. He went out with a torn clothing already from last time. He kept it, and now he puts it on, and now he comes out. You did it. He's stealing from the chayim and from the metim. Says he comes and he tells the person, listen, he wants to borrow a clothing, and he wants to visit his father that's sick. Now all of a sudden he comes and he sees that the father passed away. So now he's not wearing his own clothing anymore. He's wearing somebody else's clothing. Korea umeache. Here he is allowed to be korea, but he's allowed to be meache. Why? Because it's not his. Then he has to give it back. And he has to give it back, and he has to pay him for tearing the clothing. If he didn't tell him, he's not allowed to tear. Meaning, if he didn't tell him that he was coming to go visit his father that was sick, he cannot tear. Why? It's not his. Some people, they do that as well, right? When they go to, for example. So, we learned in the Braita, the person that's sick, that somebody passed away, we do not tell him that he passed away. Because then he's going to go a little bit crazy. So this is what we spoke about the other halacha, that when somebody's already half, this, we don't say it. Yeah. Chole, meaning the person's sick and somebody else passed away to them. So then we would tell them. So he said, no, we don't tell them. Why? Because if not, and they also don't do kriya in front of them. And also they keep the women quiet in front of them. Why? We don't want to tell them, so we keep everything hidden. And also we tear for a katan because of ogman nefesh. They also tear for father-in-law and mother-in-law because of the kavod of the wife. Papa says, Tana Bavel Rabati. We learned in Avel Rabati. This is one of the Masechtot there in Avodah Zarah the end. An Avel is not supposed to put a child inside of their chek. Because then it's chok, which means, sometimes people, they do this. In a sense, children should not really be in a bet avel. Why? Because children, they bring simcha. So if children bring simcha, what are you bringing a child to a bet avel? You understand? They come, they bring a child, also they start, they're in the middle of Avelut. There's no simcha. Huh? But they're not supposed to. That's what it says here. Avel lo yaniach tinok betoch heko.
לא, חלילה זה ההורים שלו, אחד מהם יושב שבעה.
Fine, but that's what it says here.
סבתא.
Yeah, that's what it says over here. Okay, fine. 48 also as well. Fine. They're not allowed to bring schok. Fine. Okay. Now it says over here like this. They only do Sudat Habrah on regular beds that are turned normally. If somebody goes to a bet avel, if he was very accustomed to them, so then they could give also to the reach to eat on a mitat kfuya, just like the avel is doing. And if not, so then they're going to do it on mitot zekufot. Rava itra b'minta. So Rava, something bad happened to him. So basically, one of his family members passed away. Abba Bar Marta came in to him. To Abba Bar Menyuma, there's Abba Bar Menyuma. Rava Zakif, Abba Bar Marta kafe. So Rava, he went and he put the bed up normally, and Abba Bar Marta, he bent it over. Amar kama let beidaita. How is Chaser Da'at, right, to this Talmid Sa'id Zeh? So he went and he said, that means basically he's coming and saying that, what's he doing here? He shouldn't have done such a thing. Okay? So Tana B'Rav, we learned on the right. Somebody's going to go from one place to another place to do business. Yeah? So he says, Im yachol lema'et bisko yema'et. Right? But he says, during the 7 days of Avelut, he's not allowed to work. So if he could be mima'et, he's going to be mima'et. And if not, yigalgel imahen. He's allowed to continue doing the schora with the people, right? But not bifnei atzmo, but not by himself. Because basically, obviously, he traveled just
זה
to go
בחודש,
there.
זה בחודש.
There's a shiva,
לא,
during
לא,
the shiva.
בשבעה.